Hey everybody, how you guys doing? It's Jamal with Review Me and Paper Cut for another edition of Shoot the Shit, and we're here with the awesome Dirk Bader. He's based in Germany. Dirk, feel free to say what's up.
Hi guys, how are you? Thanks for joining
And
us.
yeah, yeah, and girls too, right? No,
Yeah,
yeah,
of
Dirk
course.
is awesome. Like I said, he's based in Germany, specifically in Munich. He's represented by Isabel Scharenberg. We'll say that's how we say it. And yeah, he's uh, fashion and beauty and advertising. He assisted some of the big names in photographers, and we'll get into that shortly. Obviously, David LaChapelle and Peter Lindbergh, and obviously Patrick Dumarchier, which is amazing that you've got to learn from all these just really incredible photographers. And we'll get into that. But first, just give people a quick, 2-minute blurb background about yourself, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Yeah, originally my background is in advertising. I was working in an advertising agency for about 3 years before I wanted to do, well, I initially wanted to do something creative, but after school, it's kind of the German way to do an apprenticeship and get your papers and everything. So I went to do that at the advertising agency before I studied communication design. But while I was doing that, I realized more and more it's not really the graphic design of the whole, I was interested in magazines and these kind of things, of that whole business. It was more the pictures itself, because as a graphic designer, even an art director, you ultimately just handle images. You don't really create them. And I got more and more interested in creating them, which wasn't a big part in our studies, but I did an apprenticeship afterwards in Germany and in Stuttgart, and he was a pretty cool photographer. So the whole lifestyle and how he was going about his day and his jobs, I thought that was cool. But I put the goal higher, and I said to myself, I don't want to start in Stuttgart or Munich or Hamburg or something, and work my way up over years, because at that point I had obviously not been in my early 20s, more in my late 20s, and I wanted to speed things up a little bit and also go to the top and learn from the best. So I set a goal for myself, if I make it in New York, to assist some of the really big guys, some of who you just mentioned. I'm going to do it, and if not, I will go back to graphic design. So after a couple of phone calls back and forth, I flew there at one point, and I landed the job with La Chapelle at first, and I stayed there for almost 3 years. So this is how I got into photography initially. Of course, that's not shooting as yet, but it had some private reasons with, she's now my wife. I met her in New York, but she couldn't stay in the States anymore for visa issues. And that's the reason why I decided to go back to Germany and Munich, because I had an agent at that point already and some clients here, which made it easier to fall back on and start right away.
Awesome. Yeah, cool. So yeah, for you, it was just like, all right, I'm going to just go and do this full time. And if it fails, I'll just go back. So I think that's a pretty good approach, because at least at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out, you can, of course, be like, hey, well, I gave it everything I got. I went full time, which I feel like some other people kind of try to go, oh, well, I'll do this freelance, thing on the side. And I feel like you can't get as good as you would like to be, as fast as you would like to be, like you said, without just jumping in, which is scary, but I think that's a good road that you took. And
Well,
so
I think it's the only way to do it, actually. This halfway, and I actually have a real job, but then on the side, at one point you have to decide that you want to be a full-time photographer, and yeah, with all the benefits and all the risks, of course. Of course, you don't have a job every day, maybe not even every month, at the beginning especially, and you just have to keep it up. I mean, that's almost the main advice I could give, to not give up, because yeah, even over years, and sometimes you see photographers struggling who have been big at one point, they're not as big anymore, and then they come back again, and you're not like big for 30 years straight, unless you're Peter Lindbergh, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's a good point. At some point, you do need to eventually just get in there.
Right.
Um, so speaking of which, learning from all these guys, what were some of the things you learned from each person, starting with, La Chapelle?
Well, I would say one thing, it doesn't sound as dramatic as it maybe is in reality, because it's not a big secret. But one thing I would say is from David, I learned that if you want to shoot something in action, like people jumping, people dancing, football players huddling. I mean, I'm mentioning things that we actually did. These things have to happen. What I mean is you can't just stage these things, have them pose. You pose like you're dancing. It looks like she's posing to be dancing, and she's not dancing. And especially when you have movement in your pictures, when you want to be real and lively in your pictures, you really have to manage to get your subject, whether it's a celebrity, which makes it a bit harder maybe, or a model or a normal person, to do what you want to show. I remember we had shoots when everybody from model to the client in suits and his agent and everybody had to be dancing around the girl. So it was like some sort of nightclub atmosphere, and he was screaming at the model through a bullhorn, and this whole energy and this dancing, this nightclub atmosphere, really, because everybody was dancing, shows in the pictures. And I've worked with a photographer who was working the opposite way a little bit. He was trying to get the same pictures. I mean, saying, it looks real. Of course, David's pictures don't look real, but what happens in them, like people jumping, singing, dancing, is real. It all happened, and it happened for real, and they were going for it. Throwing cake or something at each other. I mean, I was lucky enough to go through his archive at one point, and I went back to old jobs that I admired, that I wanted to know how they came about, and you could tell that it started soft, and it started with styling, and it started, the careful way. But at one point, there must have been, like, I'm thinking of one particular job with Drew Barrymore, where she is on a pink backdrop, and there is cake splattered all over her and all over the backdrop. And that really happened. You could see in the beginning the styling was strategically placing some whipped cream on her, and then at one point it just snapped. And I was not on this job, but knowing from the other jobs how they went, I know that David must have taken a real cake and thrown it at the set. This is what I'm talking about. You want to shoot a cake scene with cake being thrown, throw cake. Don't place it somewhere. This is, as I said, it doesn't sound as dramatic, but you need to create the atmosphere you want to show in your shoots, and don't pretend, because it's going to show. That's for David, maybe one of the things that I really took away from him.
Cool. Yeah. So I actually have that image. I just want to pop it up.
Yes, quick, exactly. That's it. That's it.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. That is an amazing image. That's fantastic. Yeah. And
well done.
Next person.
Live research.
Yeah. And what about the next?
So with the other guys, with Peter Lindbergh, for example, I remember a shoot that was supposed to happen on a sun terrace of a studio called, I think it was even called Sun Studio or something in New York. I'm not sure if it still exists. And they had a beautiful rooftop terrace, and obviously it was supposed to be sunny, and it was with one of the Olsen sisters, and it was raining cats and dogs. And he still went onto that rooftop terrace, took an umbrella for himself and an umbrella for the Olsen girl, and he put her under the umbrella and shot that scenery, and it was an amazing picture. Again, that sounds like, well, so he just shot in the rain, but what I'm trying to say is you go into a shoot with a plan, and not always everything happens. Of course, you have to have clients that play ball with it, of course. But ultimately, if you're standing there in the rain with a client and he's expecting sun, he has no choice but trust you that you're coming back with a great image that he can use for his or her purposes, and he will have to let you go or cancel the shoot. And he is a person who goes certainly with a plan and a big entourage and location scout and props and everything into a shoot. But yeah, exactly.
It's that image.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
But
I like this live research thing I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Very well. Very well. He obviously makes the best of the situation. You know, he goes there and he has a feeling for the person and for the location and for the circumstances, and he creates a great image. You can't get stuck with your sunny day you had in your mind, and again, to make it look real and give it some life to it, to the image. If you try and set up a roof and some HMIs and to create that sunlight that you don't have, it's probably going to show that this is some sort of fake sunny atmosphere you created. But if you turn it around and say, well, we got rain, what can we do? It's doesn't it look cool or look nice how she sits there with this umbrella and you just go for it and shoot it. I think you're better off probably. So just be able to switch your plans or to switch your concept in your head and move with what's happening at the moment. At least I try to do that. I mean, I'm not saying I always manage to, but it's one thing that I always try to remember. If I get into a situation where I feel like it's not what I had planned for and what I wrote down on paper, I just remember these situations and what these guys did with it. And to move to, who else was it? Albert Watson, for example, is one thing that I found quite interesting. He works in a way that you wouldn't imagine a photographer works, which is not adding lights. A lot of people, when they see it's not working, they add another light. He makes light and then he creates his image basically by shading certain parts of the image. That could be a huge black cloth on one side to get the shadow. Actually, my shadow side is here. I would add a black cloth here, which makes my face on this side a much darker. Maybe I'm wearing a white t-shirt. He's flagging off the t-shirt so it's not as bright. He creates a shadow over half the face. I mean, he has a lot of flags on his set. He starts with a lot of light and then he brings in flags and black cloth and starts taking light away. That is what I mean with you wouldn't expect that maybe necessarily, because usually the question for photographers is always, do I have enough lights? His way is, do I have enough flags? Because he's always taking away the light.
Cool. Yeah. So that's, that is a very interesting kind of way to kind of go about it. Yeah. So great, options there. And then let's get into, so going back. So obviously, so now you left your job doing advertising, graphic design stuff. You moved to New York. You're assisting all these photographers for a number of years. What was the total years? Five or six total or something? 5. Yeah. So, so just for 5 years. So, were you just assistant? How are you shooting to develop your craft? And also, how did you make ends meet in New York? I mean, that's, tough city. Yeah. We're there right now. Don't be fooled by this painting. This is, we borrowed this. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, I don't know how people do it now, because I heard it's even got more expensive. But well, I was just trying to get as many assistant jobs as possible. And quite honestly, of course, with all the big photographers you mentioned and I worked for, I could not have survived. Of course, I had to find smaller photographers who shoot more frequently. Especially David, his shoots are, they require a lot of preparation. You have to build a set, you have to break it down, you have to build a new one. So he shoots maybe 2 days for the week, 3 days maximum. Then the job is done, and then he might not shoot for another week or two. So if you only get paid as an assistant, you need more jobs than that, of course. So after a while, I also told him I need to go out and freelance. I come back, I work the jobs with you whenever I can. I got paid for the studio work also, that's one thing. I went out and worked for other photographers in New York. It usually works through other assistants. So you hire somebody to go work for La Chapelle, he hires you back to work for Peter Lindbergh. It's more like a give and take. You know, I always wanted to work for David, so you get him in and he gets you in. And bigger jobs, more assistants, also small jobs for People magazine. I mean, for here, it sounds like it's a big job already, or for one or the other photographer listening, maybe. It is, obviously. But it's, of course, not Italian Vogue or something like that that Peter, Patrick, or David were doing. So you need more than just the raisins in the cake. You need the dough as well, literally. And in terms of shooting, I started testing quite early because my goal was always to become a photographer. You could say every assistant's goal is to become a photographer, but deep down, I think sometimes it's not, or they're too worried about all kinds of things, exactly about the downside that we spoke about earlier regarding not having a job every day or every week or even every month. They're worried about how am I going to make ends meet, and how I need this first and that first, and then they get stuck in assisting because it can be a pretty cool life. Of course, you fly around, meet famous people. You're kind of part of the job. You can go to the newsstand and take out any Vogue you want and say, look, I worked on this and that was cool, and I have a story about this one. But ultimately, it's not your job, of course. You're assisting still. And I borrowed, I think I had a light meter. That was all I had in the beginning. I borrowed all my friends' photo cameras, each time a different one. I got film and Polaroids from La Chapelle and lights from another friend. I didn't own any equipment, but I was pretty much the only one shooting, while the others were just assisting and having the equipment to one day work on their book. And for a long time, they didn't really. And so when I did go back to Germany, I did have a decent book. It was not at the point where I wanted it to be, because it happened quite fast, as I said, with my now wife, that she couldn't enter the States anymore. And so it all happened within 3 months that we had to leave, or I had to leave. But at least I had a book, and I started working on that and improving it. When I came to the different market, Germany, I had a beauty book mainly, and the market in Germany is more fashion, so that was one thing that I had to adjust to. But yeah, it worked out in the end.
Cool. Yeah, no, that makes definitely a lot of sense. And so what are the big differences between, Germany, Munich, and NYC? Obviously, New York is much a larger market for a lot of things, but what are some of the key differences stylistically now? Obviously, back then is a different story, but I guess you could say back then and now. So what are the key stylistic differences and industry differences?
Well, industry differences, I would say it's a bit more commercial in Europe. Also the style, even the magazine style, I think. Maybe if you take Vogue aside or something like that, like the really top magazines, or we have a Harper's Bazaar now recently again. A lot of the magazines are more commercially oriented, which means it's a bit, well, I would call it high-end lifestyle photography more than fashion photography. If you think of what a Peter Lindbergh, a Steven Meisel, or a David LaChapelle does, of course, these guys are in some of the magazines. They do some of the big campaigns, but that again is like the raisins and not the majority of the jobs that are being done in Germany. So you have these kind of natural looking girls in street scenes. It looks a bit more, of course, they're wearing expensive outfits and everything, and it's done in a high-end way, but it reminds me a little bit more of a lifestyle than a glamour photo production, if I look at it. And coming from New York, I know you can't do more. It's more up there. The jobs are all the big worldwide campaigns are usually shot in New York, or maybe Paris and London, but usually New York. You know, also the beauty stuff, especially. One of the differences that I noticed when I came to Germany was that my portfolio in terms of beauty was more targeting towards Mac and maybe, if you want to speak commercial, even Sephora. But if you look at what they have in their store windows, it's still quite creative, you know, for the holiday season or something. I remember working with a photographer. They had these golden eyelashes and whatever. So it was kind of gold raining on the girl. So it's still not a natural image in a sense. So these precise, perfectly lit images, that's what my strengths were and are, I guess. And coming to Germany, if you have beauty, you have Nivea or something, you know, that's like almost like natural light and a girl flying hair and she's laughing and having a good time because she has such beautiful skin. It has nothing to do with Lancome or MAC Cosmetics or anything like that, or Maybelline. So that is probably the main difference, I would say, that the clients expect more approachable images and not these artificially high-end, up there campaigns. They are done in New York.
Got you. Cool. Yeah, yeah. And so, you know, speaking of which, let's we'll jump to your website for a little bit and just kind of, you know, look at some of the different, you know, projects you've done recently and go from there and kind of talk about. And it's funny, you know, obviously looking at your book, I mean, your book still is probably more creative than what you're talking about. So obviously you try to bring some of that flair into it. But yeah, right. You can definitely see a more cleaner approach.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not always easy also, because a lot of people say, well, let's start a bit earlier. When you start as a photographer, I think there were some questions also what the 3 things are you should do in the beginning as a photographer. Okay. Everybody's asking for a style. You have to have that style. If you think of David or Peter, it's quite the opposite style, if you want, like black and white and natural, no makeup, no retouching, a little makeup. And David, on the other hand, with his crazy world he's creating almost. But that's a style. It's a distinct style, and they're being booked for that. Now they're being booked for the names as well, but in the beginning they were being booked.
I like this Material Girl image right
yeah.
here.
That's a very old story, by the way. Yeah, I've seen it in the meantime several times with these shards of mirrors. But yeah, that was a fun job. Where was I?
You're talking about the different styles as you're starting out, and
right, exactly. So everybody is requesting you to have a style, which of course makes it then different to find clients, because then you have those clients who want that style, and all the others say, yeah, but we don't need that style. So maybe you might find yourself going back and forth a little bit, especially me coming from all these different photographers' backgrounds. I've seen quite a few things. I was trying everything a little bit, and I thought, oh, how cool. Look, I can tell everybody I worked for Peter Lindbergh and David LaChapelle, and everybody not in between, but style-wise maybe, you know. Demarchelier is something, a little bit of both worlds, or with gray background, and I bring a lot to the table. I've learned it all, and whatever you need, I can do it for you. Unfortunately, a lot of clients didn't see it like that. They said, well, yeah, but we don't know what we get then. And they don't believe you that you can distinguish between those different styles that you say, today I do this and tomorrow I do that because I have the client for it. They want to get the guy with the hard light and the colorful makeup or something, you know. So you create your own style and you try to work on it, and then you realize a lot of clients are not looking for that. As I said, Nivea is not exactly looking for that. They're looking for something else. But still, to stand out in the long run, you have these nice colorful things. You do a little colorful again. You just bounce back and forth, and
The whole time. Yeah, my connection.
looks.
That's not it. You're about to break. Oh shit! Sorry.
So you.
Yep. And we're back. Sorry, guys. I had to switch up my location. Dirk, can you hear me? Damn it. Fuck. All right, guys. Dirk is jumping back on right now. In the meantime, if you guys have any more questions, feel free to add them to the site. While he's jumping on, let's do a quick screen share, and we'll keep kind of just looking at some of his shots. All right, Dirk is saying he's going to jump back on soon, so we'll cut this off and try to bring him back on. All right, Dirk, we just invited you back on. I'm going to get back to the images real quick. Just kind of go through some of the shots here. All right, let's see if he is back on. All right, and we're
I'm
back.
back. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. I just got an error message.
No problem, no problem. So we'll have to say, so I think what you were talking about is when you first started out and you were trying to do everything, but people were like, no.
Right. They want to see one thing. So basically, bottom line is you need to stick to something. You can't try to please everybody and have this mixed book. That is one of the advices I would give regarding the question what to do, 3 things to do when you start out. Definitely try and stick to your style. It's not something that you buy somewhere or that you just wake up and find one morning. It is something, well, as some people do have a style early on, but most photographers work on their book and realize after a while. That's what I was saying. You look at your website and realize, wow, actually it has one language, even though one is beauty, one is more natural. It doesn't have so much colorful makeup. One is outdoors, one is in the studio. Beauty and fashion, but somehow it speaks one language. There must be something that I bring to each shoot that creates this language, and you should always follow that, I think, and follow up on it. And don't just do something because at the moment some clients that you would like to have say, oh, we're shooting outdoors, natural light a lot, so okay, I adjust my portfolio. That doesn't work because it's not. You're gonna find the clients eventually, or they're gonna find you who like your work. And even if they're maybe not in Germany, but you are in Germany, you'll find them internationally, which I did sometimes. Yeah.
Cool. And what about 2 other points that you think would be important? Just from, your own experience.
Well, one mistake that a lot of young photographers also make is, I don't know if you can call it a mistake, but you feel like you shouldn't take a job that's maybe not good for your reputation, or like, I'm not talking about anything sleazy, but I'm talking about a client that you say, yeah, but this in front of white and it doesn't show my art, and it's not like a great image, a great campaign. It's just, I make money, but I don't want to do it because what if people see that? One advice that David gave me, and I've heard that actually from an agent in London as well, there is no bad money job, which is true. You don't have to communicate it on the first page of your website. You don't have to add it to your newsletter, but do it. I mean, I've done a lot of jobs, and at the time you think, that's way beyond me now, and why am I doing this? And I should be shooting fashion campaigns and whatnot. Later, you will find something that you learned and took away from these jobs, whether it be, I remember one thing, for example, I was shooting for a magazine, a lot of reportages. And I started after a while shooting this with a fake name, because I told them, look, I mean, this is not really the topics you're talking about, and was going to real people's bedrooms, shooting how they live and student dorm rooms and whatever. You go in there and you think, oh my God, how am I supposed to shoot a nice picture here? What's high fashion about this? I did it. I made my money with it. And what I took away from it later is that I realized you go onto a location and quite fast and easy, if a location doesn't work the way you had expected it to work, how to make it look good, where to put some lights to blast out the background or to let it go into the dark. You come on set and you're much quicker with your lighting decisions, is basically what I'm trying to say, than you were before, because you had all these little jobs, like 5 different apartments you walk into per day, and you have to light them. You have to make it look good because you have your standards, and you want it to look good, and you have a shit apartment. So what do? You find a way to make it look good, and later you can use that in your high-end fashion shoots. Maybe you would not have thought back then, but you realize at one point it was worth something besides only the money. So that's maybe another advice I would give. And also what I said before, don't try to please everybody. You can't like get all the jobs out there, and you want to do lifestyle, it's fine, go for the lifestyle. Don't try to be the fashion guy or like, I need the beauty section in my thing. If that's not your thing, leave the beauty out. You're the fashion guy. Maybe you're just the outdoor fashion guy or indoor or whatever. There is a market for pretty much everything. And if you're really the specialist there, people will see that there is somebody who shoots fashion in the studio better than anybody else. Clean, colorful, whatever. And they will come to you. You will have no beauty clients, but as I said, you can't have all the clients. So yeah, just concentrate on a few things in the beginning. Also, don't make a book where you show I can shoot cars, I can shoot kids, I can shoot beauty, and I can shoot to fat. It doesn't work. One or the other, or maybe nobody is going to book you because they don't know what you really want and what you're good at. And that's a mistake that a lot of young photographers, I think, do. They try to build this I can do it all website, and that doesn't work.
Yeah, no, you see that, yeah, very often. And I think that key point that I like is, you know, and it's probably good, you know, when somebody, maybe your peer says, you're like, but when it's somebody bigger than you and professional or from an agent, and they're just like, listen, there's no such thing as a bad money job. And I think that's some good advice out there. Just like, listen, if you're getting paid, there's something good in there. And yeah, you know, maybe it doesn't have to go on your book, but yeah, it one, get you some money, and two, more importantly, you will learn something from doing that. It's just, you know, every time you do a shoot, you'll get a little better.
Right. Well, and then one more thing is, of course, bad money job is always on a certain level. There is always a bad money job, meaning not bad money job, but there is a money job that you just consider, oh, I just do it for the money. I mean, David's campaigns for most photographers would probably be top of the line. That's what they aspire to do. For him, a lot of his jobs were just like, oh man, I just do it to be able to get the money to shoot those amazing editorials I have in mind. So at each level, there is a client or a job that you think you're actually too good to shoot, because you don't like that it's an alcohol brand, you don't like the concept, you don't like, I don't know, sometimes with David's case, they just took stuff from his book and said, well, look, instead of this, she's holding our product, and shoot it again. That's something he hated, but sometimes he still did. And so everybody has a job that he does, as big as it might look for others, that he's not 100% convinced with, but does to get money to also do what he likes. Because if you want to shoot the great editorials, maybe on a level that a client cannot afford, you might bring in some money yourself, which I know some of the big photographers do as well. These huge jobs that we see are not always paid by magazines. A lot of money goes into that from the photographer, and it comes back in other ways, but you got to have it first to put it in. And it's the same with any young photographer who needs to work on his book. He needs to fly in a model maybe to get a better model, or hire, I don't know, a good assistant, or rent a studio or something, you know, rent lights. And you need that money, or else it's not moving ahead. So don't be shy and do it and take it and then put it into something that gets you ahead. Maybe this job doesn't, but the money used wisely certainly does.
Yeah, no, for sure. Very, very good point. Let's see. Well, we have a bunch of other awesome questions in here. Let me see if there's anything, or if you see something interesting that you want to jump into.
Yeah, I can go down.
Any particular questions in there that you think or jump out at you?
Yeah, one I saw with a collaborative aspect.
Okay, yeah.
That's cumbersome. I totally agree. That's one of the things I really don't like to do so much. I'm glad I'm not a producer, because there's always trouble on every scale, I think, of jobs. even if the money and the budget is there, there's always something that's not working out. I remember from the jobs back then, I was actually working in the production of some Peter Lindbergh jobs for a while. I worked for his producer. That's how I got into the assisting him. Then later I came on set, and when they found out I'm actually a photo assistant, not just a production assistant who empties the garbage cans, takes care of the catering, they used me as a photo assistant also. That's how I got into assisting with him. But one piece of advice is, I mean, there is no way around making the calls and whatnot if you don't have the budget for a producer who does everything for you. But one piece of advice is to find one person that is on the level or close to the level that you want on your shoot, which means a great hairstylist, a great makeup artist, or stylist. If you want to shoot fashion, that's the key, actually, to have a great stylist. If you don't, try beauty. That's the reason why I got into beauty photography. I was complaining to a photographer once, and he was telling me, well, if you can't find a good stylist, why don't you try beauty? Hair and makeup artists are easier to find. You find a good girl, you can even shoot in your living room. You don't need a huge location, big studio, and it's true. I still shoot in some of my best stories, believe it or not, are shot in very small spaces, sometimes even in living rooms. A good girl is in town, you just get a good makeup artist and do something. And later it ends up in a magazine. Nobody knows that I was not Milk Studio or Pier 59. So you get that one person and build the team around that. Say, look, styling is done by, or we have this model. It helps to convince the others to be part of this. I know in the beginning it's really hard. You get the girls from the agents that you think, well, actually she's a model. I'm being mean, but it's true. Sometimes they send you girls and you really feel they're not taking you seriously. But sometimes you need to take a girl, do a great shoot, you shoot her best pictures she has in her book, and the agent will notice, and they will say, well, next time we send a bit better girl because she can use great pictures as well. If he got this out of that girl, what happens if he gets a good girl? So you work your way up when it comes to models, for example. You can also, as I said, get one person, maybe you know somebody from assisting, or which is what I did when I came back to New York to shoot. I called all the, I tried to keep in touch in between, Facebook and whatnot, and I got in touch with some great hair and makeup artists who were previously working, or still at that time, working for La Chapelle or Lindbergh or De Marchelier. And I asked them if they want to shoot on that editorial shoot with me and do the makeup or do the hair. And if they agree, you go to the next agency or call their agent and say, well, look, he agreed, and who do you have for hair? And they will get the point. You know, once I got a mail from an agent from a hair and makeup agency, and he sent me people. They were good, but they were not on that level. And I sent him an email back and said, well, look, last time I was working with him and her, and she was doing this, and he realized right away what I'm talking about or what I mean. And he said, he emailed me back, oh, you're looking on that level. Hang on, give me half an hour. I send you a couple names. And then that level of hair and makeup artists came in the next mail. So you take those names and work your way like a rock climber from one to the next. And then if that works once, the next time you can say, well, my last shoot I did with him and her, but they can't do it this time. You want to shoot it. People need some sort of trust in you. It's like clients, they want to see that you shot big magazines, then they want to see that you shot big campaigns, then they trust you. And if you haven't done that as yet, it goes through good work, basically, good images and names that are known in the industry. And you just climb from there.
Cool. Yeah. It just seems like you just have to kind of work your way up, and really it's about credibility. It's like, it's going to be hard for you to get the model or the stylist if you've never done anything before. So you have to just like get just that one person. And the hard part is no one ever wants to be first. That's
yeah, that is true.
That's always Yeah, that's always the big thing. But yeah, so no, great answer there.
But assisting, through assisting, you can also get the assistants of the great hair and makeup artists, for example. I mean, all the big guys, they all have assistants. And my first tests were all with assistants of hair and makeup artists. And sooner or later, for a hair and makeup artist, it's much easier to get big jobs, get an agent. Some of these makeup artists, especially, I used to do tests with, they found an agent, and sooner or later they had their first French Vogue cover. So you already have an in with this agency because the makeup artist basically opened the door for you, and you call them up and say, look, I the last months and whatever I worked with her, now she's with you. Who else do you have? Because I still want to do free productions. I want to do tests, or I want to do an editorial, a small editorial. And basically, you gave this girl a job or like a place in your agency with my images. So why not give me other artists? And yeah, again, it doesn't happen from one day to the next, but over the months, years, you will work on these connections.
And then let's actually talk about, so, how did you get hooked up with, your agent now, and how did that whole process come about? Or was that, was there an agent before that? How was that whole process?
That I just went and did go-sees with different agencies in New York as well. Just like I did in Germany, or even in India, I had an agent. Nowadays, of course, if you send an email, it's a bit hard to be recognized, because if you do meet somebody, they will tell you, I get 50 emails, if that's enough, per day from professional photographers who are trying to find an agent. So to be the one to stick out and to be invited maybe is a long shot with just an email, but I usually followed up, made some phone calls, and try to meet them in person, which of course from Munich to New York is not that easy, but you book a plane, you see your old friends again. The beginning, just go from agency to agency and try to see them until somebody picks you up. It's difficult because everybody either has a photographer who does beauty and doesn't want another one, because then you take this one's job, or he doesn't have a beauty photographer but doesn't want one because we specialize only in fashion and have no clients. Or there's a lot of factors for an agent to take a photographer, and even more to not take a photographer. So it might take a while, but eventually you'll find the person to like you enough, or to feel that it's the right time to take you in.
Cool. Yeah, let's get into one or two more questions here before we wrap up. These are kind of some light ball, easy ones, but who are some of the photographers out there that you currently, think they're doing interesting work that's unique?
I like actually the Swedish photographer Mikael Jansson. I don't know how you say in America, probably Jansen. He has done some, he shoots a lot for all kinds of Vogue titles all around the world. I think American Vogue recently as well, which is always still the big job then. He has done, I think, some Armani Exchange campaigns, and I'm sure you've seen his campaigns. He is not as known as he should be. His name, I mean, his images are. Mikael with 2K, if you want to type it in, he does amazing work. Mario Sorrenti is somebody I like. Both also actually because you can find great black and white pictures, great colorful, really poppy ones, very lifestyle-y ones with heavy set and heavy lighting, and then very simple ones where they just go on location. It's almost, I like the diversity of those two photographers. Although if you look at their work, you will see that there's something, how they, like sexiness, or like a certain way how they play with their models and the girls they're working with. But
I think I have Michael Jensen here, right? I think this is his work.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Just going through it real quick, so we can see a couple images. Cool. Yeah. Okay. So you like, he's doing some cool stuff. Yeah. This is one of those recent Vogues that you were talking about. Yeah, that's an amazing image.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
So,
Awesome.
yeah, and if you see the black and white by the beach, that's very simple compared to what you saw just now, or the one with the heavy makeup and styling. Also, I mean, these are just black and white. This could almost be a little bit like Peter Lindbergh, but not, because it's a bit more sexy and more like a Pirelli image. Peter doesn't shoot like that. He shoots more. They're more innocent and not as kind of raunchy, or like, I don't know. They're a bit more out there, sexy. And then you have these pink ones where it's a real set and the whole color mood is all one. So I kind of like. And right below the black and white Wall Street Journal, again, that's very simple.
I remember. Yeah, I remember. That was.
I like the diversity, and I personally like shooting like this also, where you. But if you don't want to shoot the same thing all the time, I think every shoot, every topic, every styling, or every season requires a kind of different approach. Otherwise, you just are the person for the, I don't know, sexy bikinis, or for a certain style of fashion. Also, if you're a fashion photographer or beauty, and I think not everything should be shot the same way. I see myself as a photographer and not the photographer who does exactly that one thing. Which means if I feel like shooting portraits and I feel like I'm having my black and white phase or something, I want to do that without being criticized for it or judged by it. But aren't you the one with the heavy colors and the hard light? Well, why do I have to be this? So I'm taking the liberty now, after I have clients and I'm working well, to branch out again and say, look, this is the advice I gave earlier on, to stick to one thing. You got to know me like that. I can do this, but I like to do other stuff now as well. And I'm bringing in a new side of me, basically.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. It's pretty much like, it's good to focus early on, but then, once you're able to build up a little bit of a portfolio and trust, then you can take chances and do other things. It's much harder to do that when you start out, which is what a lot of people try to do. They're like, oh, let's go crazy. And it's like, hold on. Can you even shoot anything? Forget about, exactly.
Yeah, cool. It looks like an accident on the website. Like it just happened and you don't know how you got there. And next time it might turn out like Lindbergh again and not like LaChapelle. Then, you got to convince the clients that you know what you're doing. And you can actually differentiate between one side and the other side of your work.
Yeah, cool. So I guess we'll do one more light ball question, and I think this will be good. So we have here from this is just regarding video. Is that something you're looking to branch into the future? Obviously, motion is this big thing now.
Yeah, I do actually. I've been playing with this for a while. I find this even harder. That is going back to the question to put a shoot together that somebody had posted. I find this like 10 times harder to do the same for film, because already you're usually not the director and you're holding the camera and you're cutting. You have to, a little bit in the beginning, you have to do everything. At least you have to be involved into everything. Again, if you don't have the budget, like the person said, I don't have the budget for a producer. I don't have the budget for like hire a film crew and sit there behind the screen and direct. So you have to do everything yourself, which means also work your way into all the software. You need to be able to cut the movie. You need to be able to do the sound and the cameras and what's the technical approach to the whole thing. I want to do it more, but I find it not I find it very technical to get into, to be quite honest. So far, I have done a couple of things. I shot a Ferrari campaign once, and they wanted me to do a movie also, like a making of kind of road movie, which I did. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to show it online, but that was, I just got an assistant who I knew was good with the technical part of it. And we went on this road trip with the Ferrari, and I shot the pictures, and together we did the movie. That was interesting, and I definitely want to do more, because there were some angles and some images in there where I thought, well, this is almost like an image campaign part now, these little bits and pieces. We should do something like this more often. But it's a big thing. It's, again, an investment, and you start all over in a way with, you have to have the time also. Like starting a new portfolio almost. It's a new craft in a way. Of course, you have your style, your sense of style, and your look and your approach to your photography. And I don't think it's too far off to making movies. But also, I feel now that everybody can do this with the Canon cameras or Nikon, and like you turn on the movie setting and you start filming. My level of movies that once I show it on my website, I want to be somewhat where my photos are, and not just film like some sort of like shoot it out of the hip, behind the scenes kind of thing. You know, sometimes I find photographers, they take a girl and go to a park, and she jumps around, and they film it, and they say, "Look, I do fashion films now." I don't know. I mean, it's just because it's moving, it's not a fashion film necessarily. I want to have a certain level, and to reach that level, it takes some practicing probably also before I want to show stuff. Let's put it that way. But yes, I am interested, and I want to go there. Yeah, also.
Cool. Yeah, and then last up, we'll just touch on. So, what are you currently working on right now, or what did you recently wrap up?
The last two things I did, I got into this, into these big jobs with some German sports stars, soccer players to be precise. I started shooting the Gillette campaign with Thomas Müller a couple of years ago already. And for 2 or 3 years, I've been shooting this now, and just recently, I wrapped up one campaign with him and another shoot with him to do the PR pictures as well for Gillette. And through the movie campaign, because those campaigns are usually shot besides the TVC, the TV commercials, which we spoke about it earlier for a second, are huge productions usually, so you're a very small part of this huge production, which is something that needs some getting used to, because your big photo shoot that you're setting up is all of a sudden very tiny compared to what they're setting up for their movies with cranes and whatnot, and 80 people staff. So you look very small, and you don't get a lot of time, and you're not really where you normally are when you shoot a campaign. That's the big thing for the client. There, it's like the side project, but it's still a huge European-wide campaign. We shot like for Head and Shoulders. That was the last job I did. The campaign image is also parallel to the TVC, which is on, I think, in all over Europe right now. They're showing it because we shot Manuel Neuer, the national goalkeeper from Germany, Casillas from Spain, and Joe Hart from England. So I don't know, whoever is interested in soccer might know the names.
Well, I know those names.
Yeah, okay. So it was a quick thing, but you have to be prepared on the spot, of course, to use your 15 minutes wisely. Half an hour maximum, and that was the last two things I was doing.
Cool. Yeah, no, that's awesome. You definitely, have been all over, which is awesome. A lot of different experiences, whether it's you shooting, going to film now, or even you know, how you first got brought up, you know, and just quitting and going in. I think that's kind of awesome stuff a lot of people can take away. So some housekeeping, if you will. People feel free to view this after. Whoever watching, you'll be able to view this and go to the different questions. You can also check out Dirk's website, which is pretty simple. It's just dirkbader.com. And then do you have any social profiles or anything like that people can reach you on? Or
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, Facebook.
Okay. Is it just Dirk Bader, at Dirk Bader?
Dirk_Bader is the Instagram account.
Okay, cool. So we'll post that right in. Yeah, so definitely follow him. Check out.
Also through my website, actually, you can go to Instagram and Facebook. It's like links there.
Okay, perfect, cool. Yeah, so thanks for joining us. You know, from Germany, obviously time difference is crazy right now. But yeah, thanks. This has been awesome. We'll have to get you on again in a couple months down the line to see what new stuff you have going on, and new video projects and all that. So yeah, this has been another edition of Shoot the Shit with Dirk Bader. Definitely check us out and check out his work. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks for watching.
Yep. Thank you, Dirk.